we call it to order then? 7:03. Grace, are you able to take notes today or?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Why don't we do a roll call just because we're mostly remote? Rick,
Yep, Rick Porter's here.
all right,
Rick Porter's.
all right. Great, Joan,
Here.
great, Joan,
Here.
Mike,
Here.
Mike. Wow, we get odd feedback. We get odd
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah, we're getting feedback.
Chris, it's coming from you.
All right, Chris, you're here. No, she's muted now. All right, that's good. All right, Chris is here and Brittany is already here and Paul is here. All right, so we are all here, 6 of us. If we missing anybody, we're missing Russ. We have Russell. All right, so 6 out of 7, we are here. Prior meeting minutes. Those were circulated. Did anyone have any comments on the prior meeting minutes? Hearing none, I'm gonna move that we approve the prior meeting minutes as written. I get a second.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Rick,
Aye.
Joan,
I have to abstain. I wasn't there.
okay. Mike,
Aye.
Brittany?
Aye.
Brittany? Yep. Yep. Chris, we're gonna let you unmute for a second, because I think it is you with. For a second, because I think it is you with.
I'm doing chat, so I just.
All right. And did we get Brittany on there?
Yes, I'll approve the minutes. Vote
All
to
right.
approve the minutes.
I will as well, so we've got 5-0 approved. Let's see. We had expenses to approve. That was what, I think that was just with Mike. Are those just the expenses on mailing, and excuse me, publication?
TRC.
Oh, that's from Lakes and Ponds. Yep.
And then we have the September and October invoices for legal.
All right, great. So I've got two vouchers here. One was the an open space project. Mike, I had asked one question from you. I don't know if I got an answer. If I did, I apologize. This was the TRC invoice that was circulated. Nobody had any comments or questions. The only question I had was, is there still enough money left in the budget after this invoice to get the project completed?
Yes, I believe so. I think they're on schedule to. The only thing that's they're going to bill us for is one sampling event and the final data report. Those are the two outstanding items.
All right, so I'm gonna sign the voucher and we'll send it on to the town accountant, who also back checks and make sure that we don't pay more than is in the account. The other voucher is for Gatehouse Media. They've got 2 invoices for $325 and $259, and those will be coming out of our administrative accounts, and those are publication expenses, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later tonight too. This is coming out of our administrative account, but we can talk a little bit later about whether we should be taking fees from applicants for the hearing notices. So unless there's an objection, I'm going to sign the Gatehouse voucher for a little under $600 total. Grace, thanks for keeping us honest on those. All right, I think that's all the administrative stuff. So I'm going to suspend our regular meeting. We will come back after this, but we're going to go into a public hearing. This is first public hearing was scheduled for 7:05. It's 7:08 right now. It's a public hearing, a request by the Affordable Housing Trust for the transfer of $100,000 from the CPA Affordable Housing Reserve Account to the Affordable Housing Trust, with such funds to be used in accordance with CPA statutes and guidelines for community housing, or to take any other action related thereto. Who's going to present for the trust?
I was going to start and then I was going to punt it over to Brian.
All right.
Do the bulk of it. I'm Kathy Robertson. I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. And I spoke at the last meeting. Just in general, quick overview, and Brian Gallagher, who is our treasurer, will get into more detail on it. The trust was approved by the legislature in 2015. In 2014, we requested $200,000 in funding from the CPC, and town meeting voted on it. Since and as folks know, in about 2018, the trust went into a sort of hiatus. It became relatively inactive. It had a hard time recruiting members. So in 2013, we reconstituted the Affordable Housing Trust, and we have a full 5 members of it, and they're all very active. Since its inception, the need for affordable housing has become more urgent. First is since the housing costs in Upton have skyrocketed, it precludes a lot of people from living in town, including our parents, our kids, the people that live in school, that work in our schools, that work in our town. It's just become out of reach for so many people. Second is until we reach our 40B mandate, we have the threat of a developer coming and hanging over our head, who basically, with some exceptions, be able to, build affordable housing and bypass planning board, and a lot of the regulations or safeguards we have in place to protect the character of the town. And the third reason is our deficit is always growing. We have Cobbler's Creek that will be coming online in the near future, that when it's fully occupied, will add about 5 new houses to the deficit. Governor's Landing, when that comes online, will add about 11, and there are new houses being built every day. So right now, our shortfall to meet our affordable housing, our requirement or obligation is, I think, 111 homes. And again, that's increasing every day. So there is an urgency, or every year. So there is an urgency to really focus on siting and developing affordable housing in the town of Upton that meets the character of the town and also the guidelines that have been laid out in the Upton housing production plan, or the recommendations about the types of housing and the sites of housing and what's needed and where it should go. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Gallagher, who is our, to do a presentation and to get into more detail.
Thank you, Kelly. So this presentation, what we want to do here is update the group on what is the purpose, responsibilities, and background of the Affordable Housing Trust. And then we'll go into the past funding that we have received from the CPC. That $200,000 that Kathy mentioned, we'll then go through how we have spent that to date, and the residual balance that exists today. And then we'll go into reviewing the current request of $100,000 and take you through the reasons why we need that money and what we intend to do with that. And then lastly, we'll close out with talking about the vital role that CPA funds are for Affordable Housing Trust, not only for Upton, but particularly all small towns, and the need for a strong partnership between the Affordable Housing Trust and the CPC, and actually other boards throughout the town, to be successful in achieving that threshold that Kathy mentioned of 10%. So jumping into what is our purpose, it's to be able to provide and create and preserve affordable housing for the benefit of low and moderate income households. We also have been entrusted, or the state has given these affordable trusts very strong powers to be able to achieve such a broad and challenging goal of building affordable housing. So I won't go through them all, but you can see that the bylaws that Upton pretty much took from the state, and then they have the right to adopt some of them. But this is what has been provided. And the key one, I think, is that first one, is that the Affordable Housing Trust has the ability to receive real property, cash, money, grants, from multiple different sources. But most of the small towns receive those funds from CPA funds, and that is specifically called out in one of the responsibilities. And we also have, and you'll hear about this later, the ability to purchase and own properties, and then later sell those or use those in the way that benefits the Affordable Housing Trust goals. Kathy had mentioned the Affordable Housing Trust was approved by the state to be able to create that in Upton. The first meeting of the Upton Affordable Housing Trust was held in October 2014. And in that meeting, they had recommended that they make a request to the CPC for $200,000. And the purpose that they laid out was to be able to perform necessary actions and position themselves to be prepared for when opportunities may come across them, such as if there was a tract of land that we had the right to first refusal, that they had ability to, before going to the town meeting or CPC, they would have some funds to initiate studies and seeing the feasibility studies or other types of analysis to see if this is something we should pursue. So that was approved, and that was approved at that special town meeting in November 18th, 2014. If anyone has questions, please jump in, but I'll just keep moving along. So the current state of our financial resources of the trust is that we have a very large sum of $21,000 to develop affordable housing in Upton. So that $21,000 is the residual from that $200,000 that we just mentioned that came from that special town meeting in 2014. The next slide will go through how we have spent that to date. We also have property located on 28 Hartford Ave North. For those that try to picture where that might be, if you're going out towards Hopkinton, it's right after, I think it's a private way of Cape Way.
Yep.
And then right before Bratton Road. So it's tucked in, it's overgrown. It's a small parcel, it's 0.6 acres, and the house is uninhabitable. And how it came about that we received this property is that the town took it from tax taking in 2013. And then it went up for auction in December 2017, and the Affordable Housing Trust purchased it at that time. So those are the two assets that we have. So there's not a lot of funds available for us to take some of the steps that we need to be able to increase the affordable housing to reach that threshold that the state has set for all towns of 10% affordable housing, to get yourself over that threshold so you don't have to worry about 40Bs coming in and controlling the development process in your town. Do you want to call?
Can I
Yes,
ask a quick question? Did
Sure.
what the purchase of the property, was that from the $200,000?
correct.
Okay. And do you know what it cost?
Yes, $150,000. And the next slide will show you some more details. $150,000 to purchase the property, but then there was services, legal fees, studies, and we'll go through that. And that gets us up to like $168,000. That's laid out in the next slide that I'll show you.
Thank you.
Sure. And then one thing we do want to note that the town accountant, Kenny Costa, has told us that we have access or control of a fund called Affordable Housing Plan, and that's balance is $7,518. After a lot of digging around and discussions throughout the town, different town members are saying not throughout the town members, we learned that it came, the account was created in 2011 at the annual town meeting, and it was approved for $16,000, so that passed. It was for the creation of a affordable housing plan and study and what priorities we should be taking.
I just want to interject for a second. That was appropriated before the Affordable Housing Trust existed.
Mhm.
So that went to another entity.
But it was CPA funds,
Yes.
the 16.
Mhm. And in the article, it says the project should take 2 years to complete. And as Kathy mentioned, it was going to be done under or with the Upton Housing Partnership Committee, which I don't think still exists. I've never heard of it. So due to the time lapse of 2 years, 2011, obviously that has passed, well past. And then also the dissolution of that committee, we believe we should return that money to the CPA. Sorry,
It's either one.
So one of the things with that, because the previous town manager and previous town planner engaged the services of CMRPC, thinking they could use that money. So we do need to get an opinion from Kenny as well as town council to see if those funds are restricted in such a way that we can't use it for the housing plan that was just created. So we do need to look at that.
All right, so, but you guys are on that, right?
Yeah.
So, and we had talked about this a little bit, and there's a couple of agenda items really talking about the 2011, 2014 funds, because, yeah, as Brian said, yeah, this trust has been in hibernation for a while, and now the new folks have been very active in the last few months, and have been asking me questions about, how things get done, what's been done in the past, and this is great, a lot of great work. But one of the things we did look at is, hey, these funds are still out there. Do they have to come back in? And I think the answer is probably yes. Now, you're going to ask for funds to go right back out at the same time. So hopefully hopefully the 100 that you're asking for is the right number after giving back these funds. I think that's the easiest way to do it. And then I guess, Joe, you're going to look at with town council or with Kenny, whether the town would have to restore the balance of that $16,000 to CPA approved funds, and then it would be returned to CPA.
So
Where are
the
we
town did do an affordable housing plan. It
Yeah.
used some of those portions. That's why there's only 7,000 left.
Right.
The question ends up being like, for the plan update that just happened, can we use it? If we can't, and I'm just as concerned about the language as other people.
Yeah.
Then that means we have to come up with additional funding, which then that is solved if town meeting approves the ask under Article 10.
Okay. So the article.
So we could all this stuff could clean up,
Right.
and the returning of the funds back, we may need town meeting at annual town meeting to rescind and basically turn these monies back to the CPC.
Okay.
That's one of the steps we may have to.
And you guys are
Okay.
taking lead on that, and we'll support, what you need from
Yeah.
CPC to get that. But, Frank, he didn't do a great job because we were also supposed to be asking for periodic updates, and we didn't get any. And I don't think that we've done that. And I think, we had to put that in place going forward. Brian turned around on pretty short notice when I said, can you tell me where the funds went? And you did a lot of sleuthing and have a next slide that you're going to show.
Is this the first time that approval of certain funds have been given and not all the money has been spent?
No, that happens.
And that, then those funds do get back. So it's a process.
Eventually get turned back, but
So we won't be recreating the wheel.
I don't think so, no. And it's just that the town accountant has, an infinite number of buckets that he's got funds in, and he can return, move funds from bucket to bucket, I think, with just whatever instruction he needs to get. Some of the instruction might be from us, like I just signed a couple of vouchers. Some of it's from the town manager, some of it might be from town meeting, if we need to go that route. So
All right.
I'm glad the town manager and town planner are on this already.
All right, moving on. So this slide tells us how the 2014 transfer of $200,000 was spent. So if we don't go through the details, but you can see if you wanted to know the details where it is. But I think if we look to the right, that helps us best understand how that has been spent. And that $178,000 spent to date has been all related to 28 Hartford Avenue. You can see, Joan, to your question, $150,000 was related to the property purchase, so that's the land and the house. And then there was another 20,000 for services to acquire that property. The auctioneer was the bulk of that. And then since that time, we have each year been insuring the property for liability insurance.
Sure.
So we spent $8,000 to date since we've acquired that.
Great, thank you.
So it's sort of a wasting asset, right? Because we're
Yeah.
not doing anything with it and yet we're spending money on it.
Exactly.
All right, so shifting gears, and spend a little bit, a few minutes talking about why the Affordable Housing Trust needs these funds, or why should CPA supporting the Affordable Housing Trust. So a lot of this information is from the housing production study. What is it? It's called?
Housing production.
Plan, housing production plan, which I highly recommend to everyone to read, and it's out there. There's a link under the Housing Production Plan Steering Committee. But it's a fascinating document. So a lot of this information has been taken from the first bullet talks about over the last 2 decades, housing prices have increased significantly in Upton. So there's 500, back in just 2021, the median price was $505,000, which was a 111% increase since 2000. At the end of this slide in the appendix, I don't plan to show it, but that increase has even more rapidly increased the last 2 years. So the median price in 2022, that's the last date we have, was $670,000. So obviously these homes that are being built in this housing stock, it's not for affordable people. Actually, it's for very wealthy people. Nothing is wrong with that. But if you're looking for diversity of the population to be able to support multiple different needs, that in the last decade or the last 2 decades, we have not been able to do that with the new housing stock coming online. So we talk about the diversity that we'd like to be able to see. I think all of us, economic diversity in the town for today's residents and also the future residents. So we need to plan ahead and increase that affordable housing stock. We talked about the Chapter 40B. So the state has strong emphasis on trying to increase affordable housing. Until probably the last 10, 15 years, this town has not probably heard a lot about 40Bs. But as our prices in housing stock and new housing has gone up, the ability to support affordable housing has dropped. So the law is well intentioned. However, there are the consequences of if you are below that 10% threshold, is that developers can come in and use comprehensive permitting, which, as Kathy mentioned, waives a lot of the local zoning and regulatory requirements. So we lose control of what we'll be able to put in throughout Upton. Kathy mentioned about the shortfall, or where we stand currently on the number of units and the percent. Like we said, that threshold is 10%. We're at 6.37%. So we are significantly short. I mistakenly picked up 108 units versus 111. So it's 111 units is the right number. And then to put in a lot of, to make sure that we understand what is a 40B development, we have some in town, and I want to make sure that 40B does not imply projects or anything like that. If you looked at 149 Main Street, I think it's a year or two that development took place, and it's mixed income level housing, and they're listed on the site as luxury housing. So the building's very nice. It fits, I think, into the town well. So we achieve multiple goals by 40Bs. So we can increase the housing stock in general, the type of housing, and then also it has to be at least 20 to 25% of those units have to be affordable. So there's a lot to be gained by 40Bs, except we lose that control of the planning board and some of our regulations. So that's the danger of that. So what we're doing tonight is requesting from the CPC $100,000. And we have 3 uses that we plan to use that for. The first is back to the 28 Hartford Ave North. Paul, to your point, is that is just sitting there and has been for 5 or 6 years. we've recognized that we need to do something with that property. We anticipate that a developer would want a clean site. We have not got any proposals yet because we haven't got to that stage. But we're asking for those funds to start positioning ourselves to be able to respond to requests for proposals, which I think in the next month or two, Kelly,
Development, yes, yeah.
would go out. Hopefully we'll get interest from some developers. But we do think that they would want a clean site. So we're asking to be able to have $30,000 for that. We also think that we would need some funds for site analysis that might take place, permitting fees, attorney fees, anything to help close that deal. And what we've learned, we've done a lot of learning as a trust in the very rapidly last couple of months, is that many of these successful uses of affordable housing trust funds across the state in towns, it's to help developers take on projects that might not be as attractive as they might want. And so therefore, we help them achieve that. It could be different ways. It could be doing some of the site work. It could be advocacy in the town across different boards. It's educating the town as to what this project would do. So there's many different ways that the affordable trust will be used. But making the projects more attractive is one of the ways that many towns have done it. The second use would be to have available $30,000 to be able to look at proactively, now shifting into a proactive look. There's 4 tracts of land we'd like to be able to do feasibility studies on, determine which studies are the most attractive for affordable housing projects. And when we say the affordable housing, remember, it could be, it's not all units, could range from all affordable units to 25% of the units are affordable. So we have not know what that look is yet. Some of these monies would help us start preparing for
Or it
that.
could be small villages, it could be, it's all in the housing production plan, but there's lots of ways that you can, cite affordable housing. It can be apartments, it can be ownership, there's all sorts of types we can consider.
So we're asking for that feasibility study to determine what is the site best used for. And actually, it can even be used for affordable housing, or should be. And the last piece we're asking for is to 16,720 is to fund part-time help to support the trust. And there's a lot for us to learn, also a lot of work. So unfortunately, the local Central Mass Regional Planning has created a new position, relatively new. It's called a Regional Housing Coordinator. We want to be able to tap into that person on a part-time basis of 4 hours a week, and to be able to use them because they're professionals. They understand affordable housing. They have the technical expertise, and it would be great for us to, and is needed by the Housing Trust to move forward. So those are the 3 different intended uses of the $100,000. Any questions before I move on? Because this is, in essence, the meat of what we're asking for.
Once you finish up, then we'll do
Oh.
questions from the board and then the public. So
Okay. And then want to share what we've learned is that for small towns, affordable housing trust, they're maybe they say prevalent. Most likely, many times, it's the only source of funds to be able to do the work. So they tap into that 10% of the CPA revenue that goes into community housing. So that is what we've learned, is that this is critical for successful affordable housing trust to move forward and start working on developing and preserving housing for low and medium income. So that is why it's critical for us, these 2 committees, as well as others as we move forward, to have a strong partnership in that we, as a trust, have no money, no sources of money. And then and the CPC has access to those funds, and obviously as stewards of those funds, wants to make sure that's used for its intended purpose and successfully used. So we understand that. This is day 1, or the first start of that partnership that we want to build going forward. So I'll leave the presentation with a success story. And I've been to this project. It's in Medway, and if you're out that way, I do recommend taking a look at it. And it really shows the creativity, and that is what is needed to be successful in building affordable housing and expanding those units to get us to the 10% threshold. So there was the Metro West Collaborative Development Group, which is a nonprofit developer, proposed to the town of Medway a 32-unit affordable housing development. And so the town looked at it, and then it's very interesting. They went back to the developer and said, can you expand it? Because there's adjacent parcels of land next to it this developer wanted to work. And they said, we want to increase the housing stock for our senior citizens. So they worked collaboratively with the developer and many others in the town. And they came up with a proposal to have, instead of the original 48 units, they went and expanded it to include 44 units for senior housing. And that a lot of that was enabled by, one, the creativity and the desire to work and solve that problem, increase the housing threshold, but also due to the funds that were made available from both the Affordable Housing Trust that existed and also the CPA funds in the town of Medway. So very creative partnering approach to solving affordable housing needs and also senior housing needs too. And there's, as we've learned more, there's quite a few great stories out there, and I'm happy to share those with others. But in the stories I have read, each and every time it's been successful, it came from CPA funds. And these are that's why it's so critical for small towns to work so closely with CPC and using those CPA funds. So that is it.
Great, thanks. What I'd like to do is we'll do some, take questions first from the board, then we'll open up to the public. And if you guys don't mind taking a few questions. First one for me, is that a yellow jungle gym in the middle of the senior housing? That you get some upright seniors there that are going down?
They're very healthy in Medway.
I like it.
It's an active community.
Yeah.
Active living.
So, one of the things we look at as a committee is whether the request fits within the four corners of the statute. And this does seem to, you're asking for money for, to be used towards affordable housing. That's one of the buckets that we have. The uses, the specific uses that you're talking about, does that fit within your trust guidelines that you can do what you're looking to do, those three buckets that you want to do?
Yes.
Okay.
So it definitely fits the purpose as we started to preserve and create affordable housing. So whether that property is used specifically for affordable housing, if it is not, we don't get attractive RFPs, then maybe we end up selling that. Those funds would go back to the trust funds to be able to use for hopefully something comes of those feasibility studies on those four parcels.
So what the funds were, the original 200 was used for seems to be, again, that was what the purpose was. It might have been a swing and a miss on this one parcel, but now you're trying to make the best out of it. And, you're kind of the new owners of that project. Okay, that was really what I had. Any members of the committee have questions on this proposal?
So
If you're-
to me, this is the first time through the CPC that I've heard about this, because I was not on it in 2014, but I am really pleased with what I'm hearing because I know the town is in need of it. I would really, I guess in our own discussion, Paul, I would really encourage our committee to make sure that we have that partnership, and with that partnership that we get updated with how the funds are being used and not end up with $200,000 10 years from now, kind of an idea. The same thing that happened in 2014, I would hate to see repeated. So other than that, I'm very excited about the development of a partnership with the.
Thanks, John. That's fair criticism too.
Just to add, just to address that a little bit, one of the things that has been very difficult to find is the finances. Brian has spent a lot of time I call it forensic work. But one of the things that we've talked about doing is every year, town departments are required to do annual reports. And as part of that, we will do a annual summation of how we spent funds. And if it is the will of the CPC, we can always provide more frequent periodic updates as well.
Great.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other committee members?
Yeah, Paul, this is Mike. I have a couple of questions or comment. First off, the previous Affordable Housing Committee did have a representative on the CPC committee. I was wondering if you intend to do that in the future, if the new committee intends to put someone forward to be a regular member of the CPC.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, so I think Brittany, it wasn't the Affordable Housing Trust, it was the Affordable Housing Committee. I think that was Rena was the, whatever that part of the statute is.
Yeah.
It was how, yeah. So if you look at the statute, they kind of lay out, there's a few statutory mandatory members, a representative of the planning board, that's me. And then there's a couple that don't necessarily, they're close to what we call them. Yes, I think there's like open space, Mike, that's probably you, or Chris. And then there was a housing one. It used to be Rena. I think it's Brittany. Brittany, do you remember who your appointing authority was?
No, I actually don't, because I took Rena's spot on this committee as well as the other housing committee, and so I don't know if it's a function of that.
You just jumped at the big paycheck, right? You just jumped at the big paycheck, right?
The volunteers.
Well, Richard Desjardins was a member of the
Actually, we're
CPC.
echoing again. Is Chris muted?
Yeah. Chris, you wanna unmute and talk for a sec? We'll give you a chance, Chris.
I'm putting my comments in chat, but it was Rick Desjardins.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Rick was on here.
Yes, this is Mike. I was going to mention that too. Was Mr. Desjardins? I'm not sure if he was representing the committee. He happened to be on the committee, so he was giving us updates. But whether or not he was officially representing the committee, I don't know.
Through the chair, you're full membership, right?
We're fully subscribed now,
Okay.
yeah. We got Russ from Historic, I'm planning, I guess everyone else has to kind of figure out who they.
Yeah.
And then the selectmen have a few kind of at-large appointees.
Yeah.
Okay, the other question I had is, do you have a cost proposal for the feasibility study? Or a cost estimate? How did $30,000 be proposed? It actually sounds a little light to me. There's a difference between, say, something called a reconnaissance study and a feasibility study. Are you doing more of a recon than a feasibility study? Feasibility studies tend to be, involve a lot of engineering. I don't know what your intent is here.
I think you're correct in terming it reconnaissance. What we'd like to do is be able to take a quick look, not a detailed look, at the geotechnical conditions, wetland conditions, buildability, that type of thing, without doing a full feasibility report. So that's what we were aiming to do. Take a look at, the Sanborn, some of the old, maps, and just see if the site is feasible for development. And, a couple of these, I think as mentioned, there are a couple sites that, were identified in the housing production plan that might be appropriate for affordable housing development. And then there's always stuff that comes up, like, for example, Kelly's Farm, just, I guess they're talking about taking a parcel out of chapter land and offer to the town right of first refusal. The Affordable Housing Trust punted on that one because the first thing we need to do is disinvest ourselves in 28 Harvard Avenue North before we even really take a serious look at anything else. That one's on the fast track. And then we'll start looking at, other potential parcels for different types of development. But you're correct, it's a reconnaissance. It's not a feasibility study.
Joe,
Thank you.
Joe and Grace, do we not have Wi-Fi down here?
I'm connected to
You are?
Wi-Fi.
I was just gonna,
He was struggling.
for some reason says no incident connection. Okay, I was just gonna try and look up the membership, what.
I was actually looking, but I couldn't find it on the server.
Yeah, I looked at it and actually sent an email. I just don't remember what it was.
It doesn't matter though, because if you're fully booked and subscribed, then, even if, I think you're right, because I think Housing Authority fits into.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think.
All right, sorry.
New question? So,
Sure.
so the 100,000, right? So obviously we've got a current balance right now. That's what, 21,650 bucks, right? And change. So, the purpose slide that you have gets you expenses of 106, close to 107. Just looking at that, is the regional housing coordinator, would one assume that is a yearly fee based on 4 hours a week over multiple years? Only reason why I ask is based on the current balance in that 100,000, I mean, you're basically dry after the end of next year.
Yes. So that's, one of the things that we really want to do is, this would be seed money, to allow us to, provide us with the support we need to really figure out what we need to do, and, and also to start looking at different projects. Then we would come back to the CPC. We're uncomfortable asking the CPC for more without defining what it was going to be spent on. So this $100,000 is to seed us. And then, I expect that, as Brian said, we expect a partnership. We hope to develop a partnership with the CPC. And so as other projects arise and we need additional funding, we would come back to you and ask it, but we'd be able to cost everything out and have very specific requests for what we're looking for.
Okay.
So if I could add something onto that, because it does relate to Article 12, which is requesting the 15,000 for the action plan. And in many towns, the 10%, in many towns that have an affordable housing trust, the 10% automatically goes from CPC to the Affordable Housing Trust, and then they basically manage those funds and work on projects. Here, basically the trust is trying to walk and chew gum at the same time, develop the action plan while then also taking actions to work on the 28 North Hartford Ave and if something else pops up. So those two requests, that's how they fit together, because that action plan is going to define some of those projects. But some of them, like the 28 Hartford Ave North, we already know that's a project that we have to deal with. Without having any funds, the trust doesn't have any flexibility except for 2 times a year to come to the CPC for requests, and it doesn't give them much of a chance to be reactive if it's necessary in case they need to act faster than what our calendar is for town meeting.
And Joe, and the trust, I mean, could you see in the future the trust looking for that kind of relationship where if you're up and running and functioning, that you would be asking for that full 10% to go over
We don't.
someday in the future?
Yeah, we don't, I wouldn't comment on that now. I mean, we just need, first of all, we need to reestablish ourselves, and we need to reestablish our credibility. So, I just want to make sure we have everything
Okay.
put in place before we start requesting that money be automatically, turned over to us. We need to do more work.
From what I've read of successful affordable housing trusts that have been in place, have a track record of projects,
Yeah.
successful projects. To Joe's point, that is how it's done. But I think that, to Kelly's point, we want to be able to demonstrate that.
Yeah.
And we don't want 800,000, it's like 882,000, something like that. We don't want that, at this point in time, because that's.
Yeah.
We want to be responsible and we want to be successful.
Great. Rick, I think I stepped on your question, sorry.
No, but I think the conversation here is answering it, based on, what you know today, and, just kind of really, getting your feet, firmly back on the floor here. So I get it.
I think
I'm good.
we were appointed in August
Yes.
and we met in September. So that track record is, we're just lining up to the starting line.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions from the committee? Anybody else that's either in the room or online have questions? If you're online, please unmute and fire away.
Hey, Paul,
All
this
right.
is Steve Byrne.
Hey,
Can you hear
Steve,
me?
I can.
Hi, I am gonna speak, I guess, as the co-chair of the finance committee. So thank you very much for the details, Brian and the rest of the AHT. It was very good to see the details. My biggest concern, and what the finance committee mentioned last week and we'll probably be discussing tomorrow night, is the $100,000 request, and then 2 articles later, a request for a plan. So your explanation now that you just went through of, hey, we want to do some things with 28 Hartford Ave North and other things, but then get the plan, just, to me, kind of could look backwards to what, you're actually trying to do. But the details that you provide, I would strongly suggest that you guys provide something like this to people, because it looks like, as Rick mentioned and as other mentioned, like, you're looking for this money and then you're, where's it going to go? Like right now there are controls in place, which I understand the AHT is there deliberately to allow you guys to be proactive, but it's a big change for Upton. And I'm not saying that it's going to get, voted out or anything like that, but it's just a big change to, especially what Joe mentioned, to just automatically move 10% of the CPA funds to this AHT and then have this group that I didn't even know you guys were, there before and now defunct. So I just think you guys need to really do what you're doing. This is a really good presentation from my point of view. It gave me a lot more details than I had prior to this call. I had more questions than answered. So that was my only thing, that, you're asking for 100,000 and then you're asking for a plan. Like, why wouldn't the 15,000 come out of the 100,000, for example? So anyway.
Through the chair, can I provide a quick answer to that? The reason that there are 2 separate, Mike, you want to do this, or can I?
Oh, no, please, Kathy, go ahead. And then I can, if anything, I can fill in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mike can fill in any blanks. I do believe it's item 12 on the warrant, is for 15,000 for an affordable housing plan. And what the purpose of the plan is, one of the purposes, is to provide the members of the Affordable Housing Trust with a toolbox. So we know what resources are available to us. We have a blueprint of where to go. We have the ability to reach out to the community to really hone in on where they want affordable housing, what types of affordable housing. This was touched upon in the housing production plan. But as folks can see from, was it 68 Main Street? The property behind Pickering, where they provide, where it was a proposed 40B project. We want to see where people think it is and what type of houses, but we also want to see what other funding is available, what resources available. We don't expect that we're all going to be around here in 30 years. So we want other people, when they come in to volunteer to serve on the Affordable Housing Trust, that they'll know what their mandate is. They'll know, they'll have the tools in place. And that's what that plan does. That's what that plan does. It's fairly comprehensive. And Mike, why don't you fill in any blanks?
Yeah, Kathy, the only thing I was gonna add is that, or I guess the distinction I would draw between the two articles is that this is basically an immediate action plan. What's being presented now, this transfer of funds as outlined for the presentation. The plan, that's the requested 15,000. We can get into that at the next item a bit more. Is something that is everything that Kathy just said. Plus, it's something that's going to establish a 5-year plan as well. So it's that'll end up being the living document that creates a plan of action a year from now, 2 years from now, 5-year goals that then gets updated as needed or every 5 years or something like that. But the 100,000 as I'm seeing it now is Kathy, I think as you kind of defined it, is let's get up and start, and as somebody else said, giving the trust the flexibility to move and act in the ways that it's defined in this presentation. One of those ways would be to act on chapter land that comes up for sale. Town gets first right of refusal for those. We don't know when those properties are going to become offered to the town, and we just get, when we get notice of them, that's when we find out about it. So that's just a small example of things that the trust might need to act on within a time frame that doesn't allow for getting before a town meeting to have funds dispersed, because there's a time frame that's attributed to those refusal.
Chair, something that was included in our ask is that the Affordable Housing Trust has no intention of using any portion of this $100,000 to purchase any land. So I just want to highlight that.
So, and thanks, I mean, Steve, thanks for your point. I mean, this public hearing serves a couple of purposes. One is, this committee has to vote yay or nay on this proposal, but a lot of times this is really a dress rehearsal for town meeting as well. And, it's great to get that kind of feedback, because if Steve Byrne has that question, probably others do as well. And kind of wondering, is this the cart before the horse? Should you think about how, in your presentation, I mean, your presentation is going to be, I'm sure, pretty condensed from what you had tonight. It was good for us to see a lot of these numbers. Good to, for Steve's committee to see the numbers. But you might want to kind of preview those two articles, or if you can together a little bit, might be something to consider. This, people get a lot out of these public hearings. I think not just the public with their questions, but also the presenters as to how, what you're likely going to hear on town floor. So, any other questions or comments on this? All right, hearing none, I would like to I'm going to move to close the public hearing. Can I get a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion on closing the public hearing? We're going to vote on it then. We'll start with Chris. Chris, we'll let you unmute there for a sec. I got it. One more sec, Chris. One more sec, Chris.
Yes. I voted.
All right. Thank you. Rick. All right. Thank you. Rick.
Aye.
Joan,
Yes.
Mike,
Aye.
and Brittany.
Aye.
All right, where that public hearing is closed, we're gonna open a public hearing on a $15,000 request by the Affordable Housing Trust for the purpose of creating an Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan with such funds to derive from the Community Preservation Community Housing Fund. You are back on. You've given us a lot of the background on this.
Yeah, I'll just start real quick and then punt it to Mike if people have questions. I mean, the $100,000 request, as folks said, covers what we need to do now. We need to divest of that property. It's stuff we need to do to get our feet on the ground. The $15,000 will be used to hire, I believe CMRPC. I think we probably have to go out to bid for it, but to help us develop an affordable housing plan. Action plan, yeah. And we did just talk about it, but it not only provides us with a toolbox of resources, And it does provide us with what we need to do for the next 5 years. And this committee, I think as Brian said, we've been in this for 2 months, and we really need the help. And so that's the purpose of that plan. So Mike, you want to flesh it out anymore, or you?
So, yeah, thanks, Kathy. The, again, we spoke a lot about it in the last discussion, but this, again, it's something that will set missions or so it'll define the mission, which is already mostly defined through the bylaw, but it'll restate that. It'll go through the process of creating goals. It'll work, the selected consultant will work with staff, work with, or I should say, work with myself, town planner, likely Joe as town manager, the trust, and any other stakeholders in the town and town boards to work together to identify what the goals should be in this plan going forward in order to accomplish affordable housing, what the trust has been charged with. And so, as I mentioned previously, it'll set goals that are 1-year goals, 5-year goals, a 5-year budget plan, and those things will obviously help assist these conversations going forward with CPC, but it'll help, touching back to what Kathy said, is in order to achieve those goals, it'll help identify possibly other sources of funding, again, create the toolbox that is available to the CPCs and what to pull from, and how they can help themselves help the town with creating affordable housing. An action plan and a priority map, all those things. And I just wanted to note, I think I passed it along, but there is a CMRPC developed a budget as well as a scope that was came out to $15,000 pretty much exactly for this request that's before this committee.
Through the chair, I want to add one more thing to this. Something else that I think we'll be able to get out of this action plan is it'll help us build support in the community for affordable housing. An important component of the scope that I saw had to do with community outreach and getting input from residents. And I think, as everyone at this meeting probably knows, affordable housing can sometimes, some people seem like the boogeyman. Some of the comments that have come up whenever there's been discussions have been not reflective of what affordable housing is under the law. So I think that by building public consensus and by helping us make the public part of this, engaging them in the process, that will really help the town understand what the need is. And when we go to town meeting, may alleviate some of the resistance that folks might sometimes have to affordable housing construction in their community. So that's another valuable component I see of it.
Okay, thank you. We'll do the same thing again. We'll see if the committee has questions first and then public. So any committee members have questions or comments? I'm gonna have one question, one comment. So question, and maybe this is for the town planner. Will this have to go out to bid at $15,000, or is this something that the AHT can just pick a provider?
We can, Joe is more professionally suited to answer that question because that's he as the procurement officer, but I believe it's something that would just require what's called an RFQ, request for qualifications in quotes. It's not not necessarily a formal RFP. And also because it's planning services, planning, engineering, architecture, all those services are exempt from certain provisions of the Procurement Act.
So I was going to point to the last part where we don't have to, but we may want to if we want to spread the wealth.
Okay.
I've already indicated for this project that while CMRPC may have prepared scope, there are many firms that do this, and if CMRPC is doing the CPC plan,
Yeah.
Maybe we want to spread the wealth and have another one do this because CMRPC did the housing plan and, the one thing we do have to be mindful, because it could come up on town floor, was like, well, why, you just did a housing plan. What are you doing another plan for?
Yep.
And that it really is, to identify the broad scopes and broad brush of that housing plan to get a community consensus. This is year one, the trust will do this. Year two, the trust will do this. Here's a budget to basically identify the roadmap for the trust. And there's a lot of firms out there that have done this for other communities that we can engage with.
Great, thank you both. I think that's important too, just to be able to delineate what these different requests are, what the purposes are. And then the other comment I had, you talked about, outreach, and you talked about kind of the boogeyman. Part of that outreach, I think, should be at the appropriate time, developers, because if you build a mousetrap that they can't work with, that you're not gonna get any housing built. I know a lot of people say, why would we ever let a developer tell us how to, to run things? You gotta make sure it's affordable, but that it's not affordable, that it's workable for a developer to actually come in.
Yeah.
And I think we've been hampered by that problem before, that we've built things, we've constructed rules that people really can't live by and make a buck. So that was it for me. Any other comments from the committee? How about from the folks online? Any comments, questions? Unmute. Okay, hearing none, I would move to close this public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Chris? She says aye. Rick?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Brittany?
Aye.
I am I. We're closed. All right. Thank you, everybody. So committee, we've got these two presentations before us. We do need to take a vote. For folks that haven't been through this before, probably the most serious thing that the CPC does is vote yay or nay on a project. If we vote yes, it is really voting to recommend it to town floor. We've had folks that have voted yes and, to send it to town floor, and voted no on town floor, because they didn't necessarily like the project. I'm sort of a, person that if it's close, I'd probably send it so that a larger body meets it, but that's just me. If we vote no, that is it. You can't get CPA funds, Community Preservation Act funds, without getting a CPC approval. They'd have to look for other funds. So this is a kind of a big deal for us. So the first one, which is the $100,000 request, I think I had mentioned, I thought it fit within the four corners, and I think it's appropriate. It is similar to what we did before. When we did send funds over before, they were used for the appropriate purposes. Not everything worked out. We didn't monitor it the way we should have. Maybe we didn't get the product, the property that, or didn't do with the property what we could have or what we hoped to. But I think this is a good restart. So I would move that we vote to recommend, vote to send that $100,000 request to town floor with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Seconded. Yep.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Chris, I saw your eye. Rick?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Brittany?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so that's unanimously approved. The second request was $15,000 for the Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan. And I would again move that we send that to town floor with favorable recommendation from the CPC.
second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor. Chris voted aye. Thank you, Chris. Rick,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Brittany.
Aye.
I will vote aye, and that's unanimous. And Joe, I think we already worked on the language of the votes, right? That it was gonna come
Yeah.
out of the affordable housing bucket to the
Yeah.
extent available.
Yep.
And then it should be I think a 2-year, time to spend the funds or report back.
Mhm.
I think that was all in there. All right. That's it for those two. We only have a couple of other things on the agenda. One was to discuss what we're doing with the 2011 and 2014 funds. I was really happy to hear that the town manager and town planner are all over that, and I think we can table that for now, and you're gonna get back to us as to what you need from us to help clean up the books on those two. And the only other thing was just really CPC only. We have not asked applicants to come up with any kind of a filing fee or an administrative fee. We do have an administrative fund that we've been funding, things like the 2 vouchers we signed today for, advertising. But should the CPC require, applicants to foot the bill for the, at least initially foot the bill for administrative costs of moving their proposals through. Really, it's the advertising, I think.
Has that been done in the past and we've gotten away from it, or is that just a new thought that you wanted to, put it on the table?
I don't know if it's my new thought. I think town manager has been raising his hand on a couple of other things where we didn't take enough funds on things. So he's got me thinking about it, that we should be cognizant of the fact, on the applicant we've got right now, it's a town applicant. So we'd be moving, we'd be asking one town pocket to pay out to another. We do have private groups like the Grange when they came in. So it really is just a question for the group. What should we do? And maybe we could look at what other CPCs do. The planning board has had, these kind of fees where we take them up front, and sometimes when the town comes in, we'll waive fees as appropriate, because it doesn't make sense to have it going from one town account to another.
Right.
But does it make sense to, say a private group came in with a project that would have public benefit? It would have to have public benefit to qualify, but with that, should we have a requirement that you foot the bill for those fees?
Actually, I think that makes sense, right? And honestly, if I take steal a page out of the recreation book of people that come to the beach during the summertime, right? An in-town resident pays a different fee than an out-of-town resident.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's precedence is there. Nonprofit groups that rent fields, pay a different fee than a for-profit organization, right? And that's the same with even some of the schools. So us getting in line with that actually makes sense to me.
And
And again, we take the majority of our applications probably are, sort of town affiliated organizations. When you think about it, and matter of fact, REC is a good one. REC has been traditionally a high user, right, of CPA funds, rightfully so.
Right.
I don't know, would we charge REC from their fund? And we do have a pretty good, I used to call it the slush fund. Rena would kick me when I said it, but we've got this, I think it's 15 grand we've got for administrative fees. So we can cover these things pretty easily when it's appropriate. But are there, should we have as part of the application process, request the advertising, at least when we get to this stage? It's not necessarily an application fee, but it's the advertising.
Yeah, if I can offer something, I've actually, and my other towns, I've never seen a CPC defer, like, say, the cost of a legal ad to a applicant that is not the town, because very often they may be like a nonprofit, so you definitely would want some sort of waiver. But if town meeting approves the development of the CPC plan, one of the things may be to also, as you're doing that plan and you're reviewing your process and submission requirements, that there may be an opportunity for really streamlining what that looks like and the development of a legal ad for the public hearing, so that the cost may not be that significant. I know Grace has been doing inventory of projects. We may get an idea how many non-town entities come forward. It may not be many, but you could always, at least as you go through that process, keep that in mind, so that you can think about maybe incorporating that into a submission requirement and revising those process documents.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to have it in place. We can't just, if somebody comes in off the street and say, well, you can afford it, we're gonna hit you for the $300 for the, legal ad. But you're right, we probably would be waiving it 90% of the time too. Or at least I would be in agreement with waiving it.
Yeah.
But, so is that something maybe Grace can keep an eye on as she looks at this process, and we could talk about it at a future meeting? Folks, I've just raised it at least.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, even, but I think going back to what Joe's even saying, right? Even if it's only 10%, well, $300 is $300, right? So, if we get 10 applicants and only one of them is paying in that year, and we decide we waive the rest because they're all in town, great. But we can't charge somebody that's out of town or for profit if we don't have a policy, right? So it's probably in our best interest to do it and waive it or not enforce it than not doing anything. Just my 2 cents.
I guess maybe Grace, if you could keep an eye out on, kind of how it's done, and I guess we'd be looking at. I wasn't proposing an application fee where people would have to come up with just money for money. It really was. I was thinking our out of pocket costs and asking that before that ad runs, that applicant's going to need to get us a check for the anticipated costs. And if we collect $350 and it's $312, we'll give you a refund.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll continue that discussion at a future date. I don't have anything else on the agenda, which Grace is in charge of. Anybody else have anything we need to talk about tonight?
No, but I can tell you that I looked up how I was appointed. So if you want the history, I can give it to you. So Rena held 2 positions, the Upton Housing Authority and the CPC position. And the selectmen, because of timing, the Housing Authority doesn't meet for all of summer. So because of timing, in June, the Board of Selectmen put me on to the CPC. So I was a Board of Selectmen appointee to the CPC. Then I was appointed later to the Upton Housing Authority. I could be a switch hitter and go as the Upton Housing Authority appointee to the CPC. But as of today, I hold a position from the selectmen. Does that make sense?
You're just trying to get 2 checks.
No, I get neither, because you get when you're appointed, you don't get it. At
No,
least
I
that's my-
know. I know.
No, I know. So, but
It's a
like, if
terribly
you do have
unfair world.
interest, if you have interest in someone wanting to join the board, I could become the Upton Housing Authority's appointee, and the selectmen could then select somebody else.
But I think we are fully subscribed now. It's
Well,
7 months.
Paul, I don't think, well, right now we
think
have
it's supposed to
7,
be
but I looked back a bit to some annual reports, and this committee used to have 9 people.
Yeah, I have 9 in my paperwork.
Yeah. And then the selectmen had 3 appointments, and the rest were representatives of different boards. And that was as late as I just looked at the annual report in 2018. I'm not sure anything later than that. And the other thing, just to note, Richard Desjardins was just a selectman's appointee. He didn't represent the committee he was on, but he always gave us updates from his.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, so something to think about if we need, right now we're at 7. It's possible we're down 2. Or maybe we should, restructure or the selectmen should restructure the committee, I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. See you first Wednesday in December, whenever that is.
Sounds good.
And at special town meeting,
When is that?
next Tuesday,
Tuesday?
7 o'clock.
I think I got it on my calendar. I have to get it on my calendar.
Someone does. I
Hang on,
have to give the motion.
Before we leave. All right, I will go to town meeting. I will report the committee's support. Anybody else wants to sit with me? Come on down.
Thank you, Paul.
Where is that? Is that high school?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.